The following podcast is brought to you by the Johners Podcasting Network, found exclusively at wrestlingwithjohners.com. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Wrestling with Johners. We are live across YouTube, Twitch and Facebook Live. So if you are watching, please get in touch with the show and I'll tell you how to do that in just a moment. But I'm going to introduce my guest on the right hand side of the screen there. You can see the current Cornish Pro Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, Interim Champion. We will get into that. And the current Evolution Pro or the Evolution Wrestling Heavyweight Champion, Simon Quest. Simon, great to have you on the show. How are you doing, my friend?
Absolutely fantastic. I'm a bit sweaty, as I think most of the country is right now. But otherwise, I am a box of fluffy ducks, as Bruce Pritchard says. So, yeah, no, cracking. Thanks so much for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And we'll kind of get into kind of how I first become introduced to yourself and couple of things we've done for United Wrestling during the course of this interview. But for anybody watching live at home, if you want to get in touch with the show, you can do. If you want to send your questions or your comments through for Simon Quest, just send them through using your chosen device and we'll do our very best during the course of this interview, however long it goes, to bring up your questions live on air. And we've had a few questions that have dropped through already. But before we start chatting to Simon, just a quick reminder of my recent guests and another reminder as to why you should be subscribing to my YouTube channel. And in August, of course, I had episode 5 of my Legends Masterclass series, parts 1 and parts 2 of my interview with legendary World of Sport ring announcer Lee Bamber is now up, so please go and check that one out. Other August interviews include KM Lane, of course, Tony Sin, and the wonderful Rev Pro undisputed British heavyweight champion Michael Oku, who successfully defended his championship and regained the actual bout at the Copper Box a couple of weekends ago against Trent Seven. More recently, I've had the Flynn Daddy, Flynn Burden, on the show for episode 316. And last week, had the wonderful Francesca, a ring announcer that Simon might be familiar with. She came on the show last week and we had a wonderful conversation. Now, some of you more eagle-eyed might have noticed that I should have had an interview earlier on this week. I was feeling a little bit poorly, but I have rescheduled or will be rescheduling my interview with Mila Schmid very, very soon, likely to take place next month, but I will reveal that very, very soon. And stay tuned until the end of this episode and you'll get a glimpse of the rest of my interviews for the remainder of September. We are in September, aren't we? The months and the year is absolutely flying already. But first of all, I want to bring up this picture here. And look at this, Simon, 2 bouts. The summer of Simon Quest, of course. There he is in all of his glory. What a wonderful 2023 it's been. And I know that you've been plying your trade out there on the indies around the south and the southwest of the UK for the last couple of years now. We will get into that. But in a nutshell, 2023 has been an awesome year for you, hasn't it? And it seems to be a bit of a breakout year for you, Simon.
I appreciate you saying that. I never thought I'd be getting to even a point where you're talking about breakout years and notoriety or even being put on a podcast. Sorry, I know you don't like the podcast. Even put on a show like this, Jonas. But no, 2023 has been, I don't know, if 2022 was me introducing myself to what wrestling is, 2023 has been more about me finding myself and really pushing myself to the limits of what's possible. And I'm just so grateful to all the promoters and any opportunities I've had for some of the opponents I've been given. I've learned so much just in the space of the last few months. And then, I don't know how it's happened. Well, I know how it's happened, but to come away to currently have 2 championships to my name in 2 very different promotions geographically, and potentially a third, which we'll come to, which I want, which I'm gunning for. Is me just trying to achieve as much as possible as quickly as possible. And why go against the grain when you got the motivation, the passion, and seemingly the support from a lot of fans out there, which I'm tremendously grateful for. I'm just going to ride that wave as much as possible and as hard as possible as I can.
Absolutely. We will be talking about your fan support. But I mean, that transition from 2022 to 2023, and I described it as a breakout year for you. But did you have a particular mindset going into 2023 from last year? Well, where was your head at, and how did you intend to tackle the year ahead to the point where, it has kind of exploded for you this year?
I think 2022 was just about me proving to myself that I could do it. Like I could go out there, I could be a performer, I could get into the ring with some of these legends and some of the names. Even I think in my first sort of 20 matches that I was lucky enough to wrestle was pretty surreal. But I was very much you never stop being a novice for a long time. But I was very much the guy just sort of shutting up and listening. 2023, I decided, okay, I've sort of ticked that box. I've proven I can be a wrestler. 2023 was more about how can I be the best wrestler I could possibly be. And one of my big things this year was actually getting into shape. I'm trying to move away from having this sort of lovable, cuddly dad bod that comes with a man of my years, and actually get into shape and take this even more seriously than I possibly can. So started that in January. Started on a cracking program with Iestyn Rees, an early plug for him and what he's done for me. I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life, and with that has come just newfound confidence to attack every match and every show with just the most best attitude and be as entertaining as I could possibly be. And genuinely, I just love wrestling. It's not even like, I think last year I think about all the nerves that I'd have sort of before I stepped through the curtain and like, oh no, I really hope I don't screw it up. Now it's just live in the moment, and just absolutely loving it, enjoying it. And I like to think that translates in performances, right? I think the best wrestlers are the ones that are out there just having fun and love their craft, and that's what I want to be for as long as I possibly can be.
Yeah, and you touched on it earlier on, or just a moment ago, and it's kind of like the body positive, the body transformation, the transformation between 2022 and 2023. And you said you've worked with or alongside Iestyn Rees, and we can talk about him in a different sense in a moment. But I mean, what's your routine nowadays? How has it changed? How have you stepped up your routine in the gym or dietary wise? Tell us what's changed.
It's abs are made in the kitchen. It's the hardest thing when you're a working dad of two with a family to sort of avoid the takeaways and all sorts of the weekends. But I do it because I always have this mentality of years gone by that, because I'm quite an active guy, I used to run marathons before I wrestled, and because I felt like I was going on these really long runs and I was burning off all these calories, it automatically meant I can have infinite food tokens and eat what I want. And then I was sort of like surprised Pikachu face at why I still had like body that I did, and it wasn't really until I sort of started chatting to Iestyn and talking to him about like just macros and nutrition and really sort of being accountable to yourself and keeping track of what you're eating and what you're putting in your body, did it sort of like start to make sense. And honestly, the transformation within the first few weeks was enough for me to think, wow, this is something I really need to stick at and crack on with and continue doing. So I'm really proud of where I am now. One of my short-term goals this year was get to a point where I could wrestle topless. I know it sounds naff, but I think of wrestlers and the best wrestlers, they sort of proud bodies on display. I've always been a fan of big wrestlers, and it just gives you sort of that empowering confidence. So we've got my gear guy on sort of speed dial, looking to maybe show off a bit more skin for the rest of the year, which I'm looking forward to doing. And that's sort of like one of my many goals, is just to come away from wrestling eventually, being able to look back at photos, videos, footage, just my scrapbook, and think, you know what, I literally put everything I could into that. And the body part of it is a big thing. And that's not me knocking any other sort of body shapes or sizes, because there's a place for it all in wrestling. But for me personally, I just want to be that guy. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a few people that are watching us live at home, Simon, we've got Ali Speller, CPW are here. Thank you, Ali, for watching. Thank you for your support. United Wrestling are also watching as well, and we'll be bringing them up later on for sure. And a certain Ben Parsons is watching. Thank you, Ben. Evening, everybody. And a promotion close to my heart and close to where I live, Immortal Wrestling. John is bringing us the very best the country has to offer. Indeed, I am with Simon Quest. But I brought up the pictures earlier on. I'm going to bring them back up because they're pretty special pictures. Simon, two belts there. There you are with the CPW, the Cornish Pro Wrestling Heavyweight title, and the Evolution Wrestling Heavyweight title. And to be a double champ, and I know that you're a two-time Evolution Wrestling champion, and we will kind of break that down in a bit. And you won the CPW Championship, albeit as an interim champion earlier on this summer. But to know that you're a double champion, this kind of early into your career, That must be a special feeling inside you. You know, from a personal standpoint, you must be pretty proud of that.
Honestly, it's and you know, I've been fortunate enough to have these belts sort of displayed at home, you know, in the kitchen. And when you get relatives, family, friends come in and what's that? I take absolute delight in showing them off. You know, it's like you have to kind of explain what pro wrestling is at the same time, which is also fun. But it is crazy. I went a lot of my life through being an absolute wrestling super fan, and I still am a wrestling super fan. And I had all the memorabilia. I had replica belts myself, and for so many years it was like, oh, did you win them, Simon? Did you win those belts that you got on display? And it's like, no, just they're like, you know, collections, and so to now have two real legit ones that I've actually earned and you know fought for, and there's a story behind them because I can tell a tale about sort of the lineage and the history and the promotions that they represent. Yeah, it's all very surreal. I do feel like my feet don't really touch the floor with this kind of stuff, and like you said, it's very very early into my wrestling career. So yeah, it's one that I try to reflect on quite a lot, and just how blessed I am to be given those chances. But yeah, it's amazing. Like the 10-year-old inside me just can't believe it.
Yeah, we will be talking about your wrestling fandom a bit later on, but let's talk a bit about CPW in particular, Cornish Pro Wrestling, and
Yep.
you became their interim heavyweight champion. There you are, looking quite spectacular, draped across the bar shortly after winning the championship. But pictures courtesy of Jude Photography, so shout out to Jude Photography.
Yeah.
And I mean, CPW, they've only really come onto my radar maybe in the last year and a half. And I think when I interviewed LA Taylor about a year and a half ago, we spoke about CPW, and it's really come onto my radar more so since, and certainly doing my preparation for yourself. But they're a company that's very special to your heart, but you've only been performing for them this year, I understand, and you became their interim champion early summer, about July. Tell us a bit about your journey with CPW so far, and what led you to becoming the interim champion then, Simon.
I think it all started. So when I was chancing my arm last year in 2022 and looking at promotions that I'd like to work for, because I must admit one of my biggest failings is I don't put myself out there as much as I should do, and I'm obviously learning that lesson now. CPW was one of those ones that I sort of saw, and I saw the types of shows they're putting on, and a lot of the talent that I was really respecting that were on those shows, like Lauren and Smoking Aces and Bullet and all that stuff. And I thought, you know, this is like looks like a place I really want to be. I like the presentation. I liked what they're putting on. So I just, as you do, chanced my arm, and I heard they were under new ownership this year. So it slipped into their DMs, which I'm sure Ali appreciated at the time, as I was one of many, and just said, look, you know, I heard you're under new leadership. Good luck, all the best. Still very very interested in coming and doing some work with you guys. And they're like, as it happens, we got this match in Truro, and it was they said, let's slap you in the heavyweight title match. And yeah, I'm blessed to be 6'6" and not a small guy, so I was like, yeah, cool, let's jump at it. You know, life's too short to say no, and there I was, sort of thrust in a match with long-term champion and stalwart Jason King and Saxon Huxley, formerly of NXT UK and now of Noah, who's again, it's just a real eclectic mix. There it is. That's the graphic. An eclectic mix of like experiences and talent all in one match, all different styles. And honestly, it was probably one of the most fun matches I've had in my short career. Just in, as far as enjoyment goes, you had everything. You had big meaty men beating the crap out of each other. You had the panto aspects, which I love as well. Fan interaction. The crowd were hot. The crowd were really hot that night as well. Came away from it eating the pin, unfortunately, but I'll put that down to an experience. And yeah, and luckily for me, I've made enough of an impression that I was invited back to the next show. And again, that was what I was actually invited to do there was actually defend my Evo belt on the next CPW show as sort of like a exhibition championship match. And myself and Liam Jones, who I'm sure I'll get into when we talk a bit more about Evo. And my journey so far, a bit of a story past there. We ended up having a like no DQ match, which again, I've had some crazy matches with Liam, but that was certainly one of the craziest ones, and privileged again to be able to do that for a promotion like CPW. That again was another hot crowd. That just brought the absolute best out of there we go. outside of myself and Liam, and we took the fight out to the streets. We were hitting each other with everything we could. I took a pile driver on a kitchen sink.
Oh,
all the good stuff. Yeah, all the good stuff. So lots of fun. And again, it's like I fell in love with the crowd in Cornwall, and fortunately, I like to think they were getting on my side. At which point, I was booked into the title match at the latest showing in Bude at the start of the summer. Kicked off the summer assignment quest.
Indeed.
And that's where I picked up the interim title, whilst Saxon Huxley's doing very well for himself over in Noah. But hopefully, I get to prove myself against him when he comes back, and be able to prove to myself that I can actually beat him. Because I've got a bit of a story past with him as well, so that'll be an interesting one if I can hold on to that interim title for as long as I can, as and when he returns.
Absolutely. Now, I think this might have been the match where you actually also you mentioned about the hot crowd. I mean, CPW always bring the hot crowd, the great atmosphere, the tremendous talent, and the fan interaction. And I think this might have been some of your recent matches with CPW for sure. I think that might have been Brazen, who you had the match with, Simon Angry Eyes. I think that is for sure.
Yeah, that's my Mr. Potato Head, Mr. Angry Eyes. But that CPW show was just bonkers for so many reasons. It was a really lovely venue, but I think there was like a contingent of fans that had they come over from Belgium, and they were just like chanting. I think there must be about 8 or 10 of them that were just chanting in like Belgian like language. Or I don't know what they speak in Belgian. Forgive my ignorance, but they were just
Flemish,
like
I think,
absolutely
isn't
like.
it?
Is that what it is? Oh,
I think so. I could be completely wrong. If anybody wants to correct me, you can do.
but they were awesome, and they were just riling the crowd up, and they were getting behind absolutely everything that was happening. I think it's just you get caught in the moment, which I do. A lot of my matches just sort of forget where I am sometimes, but I just climbed on the bar and gave a dusty elbow off the top of the bar to all Brazen, just because you just start feeling it, And it's I feel like every time I wrestle for CPW, that's just one of the best things about it. It's just the fans and the atmosphere. I think they're committed to putting on the best shows possible, and I feel like the fans there are there to watch them wrestling and not sit on their hands. It's it's a privilege to wrestle for them and be their champion.
And we've got Ali again asking, which is the best bout? I think the best bout is the one that you hold, isn't it, Simon? They're certainly pretty neat looking belts for sure. Or is she talking about which is your favourite out of the two? But the two that you hold. But I know that the CPW Championship, and there it is there. It's a beautiful looking.
It's like choosing between my kids. It's like choosing between my kids.
You can't do that.
I love them both equally. Yeah.
Absolutely. And let me just get my slides all organised here. And Ben Parsons, once again, the CPW in Penstowe. That was a great show. The first time that I think he must be the MC then. So apparently the main event was something spectacular, recalls Ben. And they do speak a lot of different languages, Belgians, mainly French, Flemish. I was right. And Dutch. Thank you, Ben, for correcting me. You saved my bacon there, my friend. Let's talk a little bit about Evolution Wrestling then. I'm sure CPW will definitely come up again during the course of this conversation, and now they're firmly on my radar. Seem like an awesome company, and like I say, draw some fantastic crowds, some amazing talent, some wonderful shows, and I'm going to have to try and make my way down there at some point sooner or later. But EVW, Evolution Wrestling, and like I say, that's kind of where you cut your teeth, where you learn the ropes literally and figuratively, and they've got a very, very special place in your heart. And you are a two-time EVW champion as well. You won the title last year, and then again, would it have been about March this year, April time?
April 1st it was.
Yeah. Tell us a bit about your journey with Evolution Wrestling, because it's been a spectacular one, certainly as far as yourself and Simon Quest is concerned. And many would argue that we probably wouldn't have the Simon Quest that we love and know now if it wasn't for EVW.
100% you wouldn't have Simon Quest if it wasn't for the support and belief that Evolution Wrestling and the Next Gen Academy put behind me. I mean, it's a funny one because I feel like I sort of hit the ground running with Evolution Wrestling, and I just haven't stopped, and now I'm sitting here as a two-time champion. I always say the second belt always means more. I think a lot of people say that in wrestling because it shows you did it once, you did okay, and then you're good enough to sort of get it again. And the lineage of that belt itself goes back to 2004, so it's nearly 20 years old. Some of the names that passed through held that belt, and then I see those titans, those wrestling gods, and then there's little old Simon Quest, well, not little old, but Simon Quest on the title history, but twice on cage match. It's all a bit surreal, but I'm very, very passionate about that belt. I feel like it's I think holding on to that belt aligns with a lot of my purpose and values as a wrestler. I like to approach things with a lot of respect, a lot of integrity, a lot of stewardship. And if I'm going to hold a belt, even if it is for my home promotion, which is an honor in itself, I'm just going to continue to assume the role of like, well, I have to lead the show and put on the best show possible that I possibly can. That's not me trying to tread on anyone's toes, but I understand the weight of responsibility and what that means. And I know some people shy away from that, and that's absolutely fine. It's an aspect to be in the show, right? I know it's being cast as a king in a play, but it's an important role. And no matter who I'm against, what I'm against, being the champion means the world to me, and that pressure, that privilege will never be lost to me. But sorry, you asked about the journey for Evolution Wrestling, and please do cut me off if I start waffling in my
You carry on.
So, like I said, I've been told I sound a bit like a West Country Jimmy Carr, so if I start mumbling, then let me know. But originally, I was actually supposed to, I started training to be a wrestler about 2021. During COVID, that's when I decided to do it. I'm probably going to my decision to start a bit later on. But I was originally being like lined up to be this monster heel. A lot of people say, you're 6'6", Simon, you're going to come across as a big guy. You have to be this heel, and everything I was being groomed for in training, all the drills, I was being positioned as the big man, the guy who was going to throw people about and be mean and horrible, get angry and be Mr. Angry Eyes, but in a bad way, sort of thing. And literally right up until my first match, it was like, right, okay, let's get your first match out of the way. Let's put you out there. It's Boxing Day 2021. Evolution Wrestling's traditionally biggest show is on Boxing Day. That's when we pull the biggest crowd. It's a great atmosphere. Everyone's Christmas vibes. I was lucky enough to have my debut against Mulligan. So that was a big match there. And I had loads of family and friends in the audience, and they decided to put me out as face. So I sort of did it as a face, and then I think Rob and Liam, sort of the promoters there, they must have liked what they saw and decided, all right, we'll keep you as a face for the next one, and then the next one, and the next one. And in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, but I am supposed to be this big heel eventually. Like, I'm supposed to, a lot of my inspiration and wrestlers I was fans of was like, your Kanes and your Warlords and like your big monsters and stuff. And it just didn't happen. And before I knew it, I was like, okay, I was almost like learning on the job. It's like I'm learning how to be a babyface in these matches, and I think I sort of credit that the way it panned out is I didn't get to overthink it. I was just a good guy in a match that just has to, right, okay, I've got to flick a switch. I've got to be a John Cena. I've got to be a Hulk Hogan. I've got to be like the fans are cheering me. Let's just channel that. Let's just let them know that means a lot to me, and that's how I approached that. And then it became a point where, okay, I guess I'm a face, and sort of been a face for the last 1.5 years, and everywhere I've gone. So of course there comes the gear with bright colours, and before you know it, you sort of learn to love it, and it becomes an addiction. Pressure, a privilege, again, but it's a great feeling, an awesome feeling, and I'm grateful for the fans that have not got bored of me yet, if I'm being honest. So let's see how much we can push it. I'm constantly feeling the pressure to be like more interesting and do more sort of like interactive stuff in my ring style, and certainly this summer, along with the consecutive shows and matches I've had and great opponents I've had, the stories and feuds. In the back of my mind, I've been thinking, right, let's see out 2023 with Evolution Wrestling and everywhere, with a few more tricks up the sleeve, and what else can I bring out of my arsenal that just keeps things fresh and just keeps, hopefully, my perceived popularity going for as long as I can.
Absolutely. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though. Haven't you recently aligned with the gold standard? Does that not officially make you a heel now, Simon?
No, I don't. So gold. No. So this is what I mean by the stewardship.
Please correct me. They seem like bad guys to me. I could be wrong, but
they and I'm told that it's like a Disney movie. I'm allowed the odd swear. They have been dickheads for a long time. They had a hand in doing everything they could to make sure I wasn't the Evo champion earlier in the year, but they seem to have had a change of heart mercifully. And this is where I go back to the whole stewardship thing. I like to think that I've had some sort of influence there on them as characters and wrestlers they want to be, because Lord knows they've been talented enough to be the guys to carry any company for a long time. So the gold standard have now switched allegiances and are fully fledged good guys. And it was really apparent how relieved some of the Evolution Wrestling fans were at our last show that we had at Hungerford. I think every match other than my own had some sort of gold standard involvement in it. And I think the kids just, it's almost like DX back in the day. It was like they were cool bad guys for a long time, and now it's okay to cheer them. So I haven't aligned with them. I'm certainly on the same page with them. Some of their newfound
I stand corrected.
You're not getting gold standard questions yet. I feel like I'd be a bad fit for them. I think I'm too old and boring for these young up and comers and their flashy moves and flips and cross chopping, etc. It'd look a bit awkward if I start doing it. I don't think anyone wants to see that. But no, we certainly are. We are on the same page for Evo at least. We'll come back to United at some point where I go into my complicated relationship with my brother, but it's a good time at Evo. It's
absolutely
on great shows.
Let's bring up some pictures, and there you are as the Evo champion, of course.
Yeah.
And some great pictures here. I think these are pictures courtesy of Bear Vision, so thank you very much for this. An awesome photographer. We always get some good pictures on here from Bear Vision and your time in Evolution Wrestling, especially.
Yeah.
And when you first came, I can't know every independent wrestler in the UK. And God forbid I try. And I know a fair few of them. But like I say, with me, trips up and down the country and everything. But you came onto my radar when I interviewed CJ Rawlings back in March, I think it was. And he was talking about the vacant Evolution Wrestling title at the time. And I think they just had a show where he faced yourself in the final of the tournament to crown the new champion. And of course, Gold Standard came out as a no contest. I think you'd probably beaten Jim Hunter in the semi-final. He'd beaten Jakk Sellstrom, and it was yourself and CJ. Tremendous talent. I love CJ so much. I think he's had a pretty phenomenal year himself. And I think there's so much more to come from him. But then it went to, so after that, the next show, you had a ball rope match against, is it Liam Jones, if I'm not mistaken?
Yes.
And it was this match here to crown the vacant Evolution Wrestling Championship, and it's just a few stills from that match, and I've got to say it looks pretty intense, as you would expect a ball rope match to be. But tell us a bit about, because I don't think I've ever interviewed a guest that's been a part of a ball rope match. As a stranger question and a stranger fact as that might be, what was that like to be in there with Liam Jones in the ball rope match for the title?
Oh man, you had to be in the zone. I mean, and I'll come back to CJ in a minute because I want to chat about him for a bit as well.
Yeah, sure.
He was involved in the build-up, but that ball rope match was for someone who's at my level and had as many matches as I've had. That was a pretty thrown in at the deep end type of match to have. I've always been a fan of these sort of gimmick matches. Who isn't? I'm a child of the Attitude Era. It was exciting but terrifying. You think, how can we up the ante? What's popular? What's going to satisfy a crowd? How do we not make it boring? And at the same time, I don't want to kill myself, and I don't want to go over the top. It was. I love the prep for it. I love the story of myself and Liam. Liam was a big part of that match because a bit of backstory there. He was the first time I won the belt. He was the champion. He didn't get pinned in the triple threat, so he's always felt like he's had this claim to the heavyweight title, which he'd already fought hard for and never felt like he never lost. So that was his burden there. He also trained me, Liam. He's the head coach at Next Gen. So he was maybe, I don't know, a bit of green-eyed monster. Seeing the success I had, he felt like he had to step in and get involved. The ball rope match there was just to add the level of intensity. Myself and Liam have probably had 5 or 6 matches now in the last 2 years. We've had some pretty intense ones. We've had some pretty violent ones. From this was kind of the next iteration of it. Like, how can we just bottom this all out? And so some of the stuff that happened in the match. I mean, we had like the standard Lego, the trash cans, the tables, and by the end of it, the canvas was even ripped up to be so first, well, for eventually for me to power drive Liam on the hardwood, it was that was a hot crowd, and I
Wow.
will put over Wootton Hall where that was, as again it's like one of our mainstay locations in Gloucester, because it's in the heart of Gloucester. We always sell out the show every time. It's a low ceiling, so the sound just like if the crowd's there, it's just booming, it's rocking, and they're absolutely eating it up. And yeah, I came away from that feeling that match probably for 2-3 weeks, if I'm being honest. A few bumps and
Really? Wow.
bruises and debates with my wife at night about whether I should be going to A&E or not. But nah, it's fine. You just get the advice, we'll be all right. And then yeah, just push on. So it's again, it's one of those things like if I'm gonna win a belt, I'm gonna earn it. It's not in my nature to find shortcuts. It's not in my nature for without being too inside baseball to politic my way to it. I'm gonna be a champion in spirit and in purpose. So yeah, again, if we're at match, fine, throw me in it, and I'll try and knock it out of the park as best I can to earn that slot on the card.
Well, tell us about CJ then, CJ Rawlings, because like I say, I think you've had your battles, but certainly that final. When I spoke to CJ,
Right.
he said that he loved that match because of the different dynamics between you and him, and like I say, although it went to a no contest, he thoroughly enjoyed that match with yourself in the final of the Evolution title tournament. What are your recollections, and tell us your few words about
Yeah.
CJ, because he's
So
phenomenal talent.
he absolutely is. So CJ, for me, CJ Rawlings is the benchmark for what Brit Rest should be right now. He represents. He's in the absolute sweet spot where he's got, I think, just over a decade of experience. I think he's been doing it for about 10 years now.
Yeah.
But he's also massively talented. Got an incredible look. He's very trendy, popular look at the moment. He's in incredible shape, charismatic, and he's what like the kids like. So I did lock horns with CJ in the final of that Gold Rush tournament. But yeah, I'd had a match with Lee Hunter that night. He'd had a match with Jakk Sellstrom, and it was just a case of us just throwing bombs and like just sort of seeing who the better man was, and we didn't find out. So I do feel like there's unfinished business between myself and CJ, and it's because of that match and not finding out who is the better man, for lack of a better term. He is very popular at Evo, so he's almost becoming the Rock to my Austin on a smaller scale, but it's kind of that dynamic. And again, you got to be the best. You got to like test yourself against the best. But yeah, if he's the benchmark of what Brit Rest is in the UK right now, then I need to know how I measure up against him. And I need to know if he's the man to eventually like head up Evo or any other promotion that I'm part of. I want him to know that it's not easy, if that makes sense. So I'm probably trying to book myself into a match at this point. But he's someone I feel like I've got a lot of unfinished business with. I tasted it, and I liked it, and I want to see what happens with the prep time and the right setting between myself and CJ.
Absolutely, and I want to talk about a couple of other opponents. And I mean, since winning the championship, you've had a championship title defense against Jakk Sellstrom, and you had a match against Iestyn, I think, in
Two matches,
June.
yes. Yeah.
June the 3rd, Levi Cooper, I think, was a non-title match. I think you faced Brandon Lee as well. It was a very promising young up-and-comer, Joel Redmond School, All-Star Wrestling South. I know Brandon very well. And more recently, I think it was only a few weeks ago, in the month of August, you had a rematch, a submissions match against Iestyn Rees for the EVW title, and a tremendous match. So much drama, wonderful action. Once again, gold standard. Get involved. But talk to us about some of them opponents, and in particular Iestyn, who you've had a couple of amazing matches with. I think there's definitely some unfinished business between yourself and Iestyn. And let's say getting to step in there with some of them names must be a real thrill for you.
Do you know what the best thing about this championship run that I'm on is that all those 5 names that you mentioned there, they're all completely different wrestlers at different points of their careers. So it's been a challenge just trying to keep up, and the prep that you have to go into those matches, from the research, the background checking of them. How am I going to adapt my style? How am I going to be able to be as entertaining as I can without leaving open any blind spots has been an absolute joy. And fortunately, I've come out on top of all of them, right? just some of the names there. Jakk Sellstrom, I mean, 5-star Jack, NXT UK, a guy that literally, yeah, I mean, again, just a bit of background, just because he got caught up in a bit of traffic, but we literally only had 10 minutes before we went through the curtain of that match, and
Really, wow.
But again, that was like, it was great because he's an absolute pro, and we managed to get a really entertaining match out of the different dynamic, and he was an absolute gentleman, and someone I wish all the best for, because and probably isn't booked enough, if I'm being honest, just because, again, character, presence. Honored to be in the ring with him. That was probably the most, actually no, at that point it was the most technical match I've had to do. Being 6'6", as you can imagine, I don't get to do much tech wrestling in my particular style. But it was a certain challenge that I had to unlock, and eventually I got my hands on him and just threw him about a bit, and that sort of put me back on top. So that was great. I mean, I think probably then that was only second to Joel Redman, which, oh my word, like I had him in Yate. Again, apart from today, I think probably the hottest day of the year. Just very, very sweaty environment between me and Joel. A guy who's just so, I mean, what can you say about Joel?
Oh, he's on point, isn't he? He's one of the best wrestlers in the world, without doubt. Yeah.
I won't go so far as being cocky and arrogant to say I kept up with him, because he was probably just being nice to me, just to test me out. But he was again like an absolute pro. Like, just go out there and everything's on the fly, And again, it's a different type of match, different type of dynamic. You can't go into those matches with anything planned. You just have to feel the crowd, and I think that's what I learned from that experience, was just go with the grain. Like, and that was probably, from an experience point of view, my favorite match of the year was just myself and Joel in that one. Because again, if I hadn't have got myself into shape this year as I had, I don't think I would have been able to keep up with him as well as I did. So that was a rewarding experience. Evo guys, Levi Cooper is an absolute firecracker. I had to sort of drift into the darker side of the panto for that one, just because he's another popular kid, and that was a really, really fun match with him. But he's one of these guys that ever since I walked through the door and started training, he was the one that everyone points to. Levi Cooper as the guy who's got the most chance of making it big. Who's going to be in WWE one day? It's going to be Levi Cooper. And again, if you come to any Evolution Wrestling shows, you see he's one the kids love. He's one the adults love. He's a proper little Jeff Hardy of our promotion. So that was an honor to work with him, and again, try and keep up with him for different reasons. And I think he landed on me with a few different flips. I think he had the attitude of, I'm just going to throw everything at Simon, and I don't care how the damage I inflict. He wanted to make a point, and we got to share a moment after that match. I got to tell him how I felt on the microphone, just because he'd earned my respect. I'm a nobody in that respect, but I had to tell him, like, you're the shit, mate. So
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And so that was awesome. And then Brandon Lee, oh my god, I've been a fan of Brandon Lee for a long time. Putting all these guys over, like, it's because they all try and be horrible, they all try and be wrong, but it's they're not. They're all like really cool guys, and really, really like just absolute pros, and that's what I got respect for. It's the pros in the ring, and Brandon Lee was just someone I'm on the same wavelength with for a lot of things, and he's obviously putting in the hours at the ASW training school. Him 100%. And Nathan, who I haven't worked with Nathan yet, but I've met him a couple of times now, and again, just another young lad and they've all got their heads switched on, and I can't put those boys over enough. They're just tremendous, solid workers. So those are all the nice opponents. Those are the guys that I had a lot of fun and came away from the night with a smile face. And then you get Iestyn Rees, right? Who's competitively, like I said, on a personal level, he's done wonders for me. I'm part of his plan. I can't recommend his services enough. In the ring, though, total dick. It all started after the bullrope match. Kicked me in the questicles. Set out his stall as like he was the guy. Before I even started training, Iestyn Rees was the guy at Evolution Wrestling. He was the alpha male. He was the one. He was the John Cena. He was the Hulk Hogan that would come in and be the good guy. And this was his heroic return. He actually had a match with CJ Rawlings that night. And yeah, I've done it again. Green-eyed monster. I seem to sort of bring it out of people. Decided to turn on me when I thought he was offering me a show of respect, and then it just became all about him. When you look like he does, and you've got the influence he does, he's obviously in Evo management's ear, because he managed to duck me when I wanted to face him, and sort of arrange other matches that like to benefit him. And then it all came to a head in Evolution Wrestling when he was the fully fledged #1 contender, and that came to a bit of a dubious finish at the end, which we won't go into. But basically, I won, and he wasn't happy with the result. Felt like it was a dodgy call. Campaigned for the rematch, which became a submission match. Which, again, not being tech rest minded myself, I mean, well, there it is. I know my way around a wrist lock and a crossface and an STF, but when you got like a 300-pound piece of iron, who's not going to bend or break easily, that was hard. That was hard. Again, like, the wrestling fan in me just loves beating the snot out of each other. I love the physicality of it, but that was a physical match. And there have been few matches where I've been like yeeted and launched. And there's one suplex in that match that if you catch the glimpse of it, he does like a proper like toss suplex and sends me over his head, and I go absolutely flying. We stood next to each other, John. I'm not a small guy, right? Like it was.
You're a big guy, I'm sure. Yeah, but I mean, he's just a freak of nature.
Another level. Like I don't think there's many people on him like him on the scene. He's just he again is what the 5-year-old in me would imagine a wrestler would look like, larger than life. Fortunately, with again, I said it's karma. You kind of live. You be an asshole, and then dickhead things are going to happen to you, and that's what happened in that match. Unfortunately, this is where gold standards felt like they had to stand up for me, which is good because I've been campaigning for so long. There we go to sort of stand up for what was right, stand up to bullies, and a number of them in that faction were on the end of that. So clearly something got through to them, and yeah, I was grateful for the assist they provided at the end after a bunch of other shenanigans. But yeah, so it has been, this summer has just been nuts. It's been a whirlwind. The opponents I've had, the Evolution Wrestling shows have been top notch as well. I can't fault them. And yeah, long may it continue. It's something I'm working hard on to make it as entertaining as possible.
Absolutely. And another group I want to talk about is United Wrestling, based in Oxford.
Yes.
They perform out of the Tap Social, certainly
this year. What a venue.
An incredible venue. And the two shows that I've worked there as a backstage interviewer, phenomenal shows, literally, legitimately two of the best shows I've seen in 2023 with some of the best matches. But I mean, your last match, or your last show, the last show there, you had a surprise opponent in the shape of Big Wavy, Roy Johnson. So it was another hot day, probably as hot as it was today in the Tap Social. Always gets a bit hot and steamy in the Tap Social, but a wonderful crowd, a big time opponent for yourself, and a big time win as well, Simon. Talk to us a bit about your relationship with United, because they're another company that have kind of really pushed you, supported you, given you great opportunities, given you great matches, and that match against Big Wavy demonstrated all of that.
Yeah. So firstly, although he jumped me at the start and flipped me off when I tried to extend a handshake to him at the end of the match, I do want to put out congratulations to Big Wavy on his engagement. I just saw on Instagram earlier today, so congratulations, Roy Johnson, on your new engagement. That's fantastic news. The pictures look stunning. So I just want to get that out there. That he was again another like a bit like a Iestyn Rees, just another big dude who could throw me around at his mercy. But yeah, again, like this is the beauty of United, right? Like anything can happen. I think any and every show that I've been a part of, that was day 11, I think.
Day 11.
That was day 11, yeah. And I've been part of it since day 5. Exactly. And I've been part of it since day 5. And honestly, every single show at United, they've got that sweet spot where they don't like oversaturate their shows and like it keeps it special. And I always feel like with United, I mean, if I'm going behind the curtain here, I like to call it my sort of United family. There's me. There's Odyssey, there's Josh Folds, memes as well. Like we kind of, it's the only really chance to sort of like our circuits like crossover, and we end up just sort of a tremendous amount of respect, because I feel like given that we're all quite new to the business in the grand scheme of things, we all meet up and sort of see how we've all progressed in those sort of like 5 or 6 weeks between the United shows. It's like a good showcase for us to just sort of like get behind each other. So I've never been to a show with such a good vibe as United. It's probably, and also again, without sort of notching them off too much, as I tend to be Captain Kiss Ass when it comes to these things, but I do love what they stand for. The whole inclusivity part of it. It aligns again with my purpose and values, not only in character but as I am as a person. I mean, the first match I was a part of, again, it was a last-minute thing. Mike Baker and Pete put their faith in me as a last-minute replacement on day 5. And the main event that day was Josh Folds against Mariah May. And that was the best. I mean, I feel bad saying intergender match because it was just such a cracking match. Like, I was jaws on the floor, like, this is insane. I don't get this where I come from, sort of thing. It was like, it's just this whole level playing field of equality. Since then, stuff that's been going on with Kira Chimera and Scotty Rourke has been some of the best stuff in Brit Rest, like from a story perspective, match perspective. It's again, it's a very special show that I sort of have to pinch myself that I'm being a part of. And then obviously the last United show that we had, to sort of come out and find that I actually had some support from a Simon section, which can call me completely off guard. It was I was absolutely speechless. There we are. Those lads, honestly, it nearly choked me up because I was like, oh, what's going on here? Like, I've actually got like local support away from my home promotion. This is amazing. And those chaps are brilliant. I mean, they've been coming since the start of the year, I think, and they've always been very supportive. They came to like a meet and greet we did in Oxford Covered Market, and they came along and just said how much they love the shows and how much they enjoy watching us and what we do. So shout out to them. They've almost become part of the show, not just for me but for everyone there. So a great vibe and a great atmosphere at United. There's a reason they sell out all of their shows as well, because everyone wants to be a part of it. And the fact that it's in a brewery and in a stunning venue like the Tap Social helps. I mean, you get some of the pictures back from it, and it's like you get all the lights, and it's just, again, very surreal experience, and something I'd recommend even if you're a talent that's not on the card, just come and watch and experience, because I think it's for the people involved. They always come away from it feeling like it was a special occasion.
Yeah, they really are doing something different. I told the guys behind the scenes that a lot of promotions could learn a thing or two by visiting them and watching how they put their shows on. But I think 3 of my favourite matches have come from United this year, and it was Aluna Blue versus Scotty Rourke 2 shows ago, Chapter 10 or Day 10. Truly phenomenal main event, just mind-blowing what those 2 put on. And I think on the same show there was a 4-way for the Undisputed Championship. I think it's Memes, Charles Crowley, Truman Roswell, Jackson Hart. Just wow, just a phenomenal match, brilliant match they put on. And then at the last one, Scotty Rourke versus Kira Chimera. Wow, again. And I know they've got I think a chain match coming up at the October show. And speaking of the October show, there you are, and you're going to be going up against Memes for the United Undisputed Championship. Or however Memes might like it to be described. But Memes, the current champion, versus Simon Quest, the #1 contender. Now, there was a little bit of a fun storyline that happened at day 11 where he tried to recruit you into the Meme team. You left him hanging until the very end of the show, and you got back into the ring, had a Meme Team T-shirt on. We thought that you were, you've been sold down the river, or you've been sold to the devil. You ripped the T-shirt off, and the match is on for October the 29th, if I'm not mistaken, and Monsters Bash 2.
Yes.
And I'll just bring up that graphic again because it will just remind me, hopefully, of the date. But pretty sure it's October the 29th.
It is.
If it's wrong, then I turn up at the wrong date. But a fun day, but looking ahead to Monster Bash 2. And once again, that could be another bit of, it could be Simon 3 belts. But that's going to be a fun match. And I think with the fan support that you have from the Simon section, I think I know who the fans are going to be behind in that match for sure.
I hope so. So all the niceties aside, and all the stuff I said about United and the great stuff is true. One thing I will say from a professional point of view, and my own personal story, is I have been climbing the ladder very slowly, and a very rickety ladder where the rungs keep splitting for one reason or another, sabotage or otherwise. So I will give them credit that Pete recognised this and has afforded me the opportunity to be in a championship match, earning it through a #1 contenders contest with Wavy. So I feel like I've sort of watched Memes from afar, and how do you talk about Memes without talking about, he is a character, I'll give him that, right? He's an absolute personality, he's an entertainer, and there's a big part of me that wants to get behind him, but he's just an asshole. And that's the problem. And I think a lot of the United fans are getting to a point now where they just want to see a change. And if I'm the guy to deliver that change, then I'm going to do everything in my power to do it. And this match on October 29th with memes is, I mean, I've got a list in front of me of big matches, and that's up there. This is one of, if not the most important match of the year, and me seeing out my 2023. I kind of smell blood a little bit as well, if I'm being honest. I don't know if you're sensing it as well, but he was trying to recruit me, and I don't know if that's because he's having a little trouble holding on to what he's got. I feel like the Odyssey, maybe. Yeah, the Odyssey themselves, again, Artemis and
there's cracks forming, isn't there? There's definitely cracks forming.
Really,
a little bit of desperation from memes, I feel.
Where were they? I feel like he feels like maybe they're maybe growing a bit too big for him, and quite rightly so, because they're just two talented individuals. And I mean, they put on an absolute stunner with Act 2 at the last United show. It is an absolute banger. And again, I talk about seeing them every show and just how they're growing and getting better and better and better. And I'm seeing it, like they can stand on their own 2 feet. They walk around with those 2 belts, but they're merited and earned. Whereas memes, I feel like he's maybe been using them as a bit of a leg up, a bit of a crutch. So to sort of, he obviously identified myself as someone who could potentially fill that role, and I was happy to string him along as long as I was having a bit of fun, and then break him in after the spear to close out the show. And I've got to say, picking up that belt, and it's a gorgeous belt as well. I don't know if you had you've had the privilege of holding it yet, but it's one of the heaviest belts on the scene. It reminds me of the big gold. To hold that above my head, it was like, this just feels right. So hopefully it's time for a change on October the 29th, and I look forward to it. Halloween shows, by the way, are one of my sort of favorite things as well. Like, not even just at United, anywhere. I love Halloween shows. It's good. It's my favorite time of year anyway, outside of wrestling. So I can't put over that show enough, just because you will have a great time. It's everyone puts the extra effort in. Everyone gets in the spirit of things. Big main event match. Well, I don't know where I'm on the card yet, but big match for me on that show. So any support you can bring, get your tickets now, because it's going to sell out quick.
Absolutely. Now, we have had a ton of questions come in. I will be reading them all out before we finish, but a couple that have come through recently. Now, United Wrestling, thank you for watching at home, United Wrestling, but Questicles. Now, I seem to remember, did you do a promo in the ring at the last show, maybe trying to come up with a name for your fan base? Did I hear that you might be suggesting that they could be called the Questicles, which, might be, it could catch on, could be a t-shirt. Is that right?
It 100% will be a t-shirt. I've got the designs ready to go, so look out for that on my socials. But no, again, I'm very much a guy who likes to live in the moment, Jonas, and I don't know, I've used that vernacular before, the Questicles piece.
I love it.
Usually to and I thought, you know what, there was back in the day, I remember Test did something with testicles, and it didn't quite catch on, but I thought that was a different era, different time. United's a bit more edgy, so I went with it. And I almost asked them in the promo, I said, can I call you my Questicles? That's not too crass. And there we go, we've got a round of chants of Questicles for the next sort of 20 seconds. So it's that's stuck on, and as you say, it will be a t-shirt, Questicle Club accepting members.
Awesome. And let's see, we got the Playboy Prince, Peckham Playboy Hakan. So thank you so much for watching. He said that I'm guessing that the two of you had a match at United last October, saying it was his favourite match of 2022. So the Peckham Playboy Hakan is watching. And would you like to share any words with Hakan, who clearly enjoyed the match that you had almost a year ago?
Oh my God! So again, that was the last minute match for me. I think it was last April in 2022. I was brought in. I wrestled Hakan. Didn't know anything about him. I was still brand new to the scene. I saw the look on his face, and I told him I'd only had like 10 matches at that point. I was very, very green, and he's like there looking at me like, you've only had 10 matches. Okay, who's trained you? Okay, what are we going to do? Sort of thing. Even just then, he's a very, very experienced all-rounder, very, very accomplished heel and bad guy again. Very, very good at what he does, and learned a lot just from that experience. So much fun, in fact, that yes, it sort of came back round, and I was booked in a trick or treat match, which again, I love passion, I love enthusiasm, and Hakan approached that match with exactly the right amount of enthusiasm as I did. So getting in there, throwing chairs at each other, kicking pumpkins off heads, splatting each other with skeletons. We talked about the bull rope match earlier being like unique and brutal. This was just brutal and hilarious. And yeah, just again, some really funny stuff. I think I even dunked him, bob him for apples at one point, which again, like, I don't know if I'm ever going to be in a situation like that again. It was crazy. I understand that again. You're in for more trick or treat shenanigans at Monster Bash 2 on the card, but that one's got a bit more sort of bloodlust attached to it with Josh and Mike, so that's going to be a bit more of a serious affair. But that being said, the brutality is still going to be a big part of it. But Hakan himself, yeah, lots of love for him, and we're now actually really good friends. It's a healthy respect I've got for him professionally. He's a good guy.
Absolutely, and even United said that the match with Hakan was an absolute belter. And United again, there may be a riot October the 29th if you do not win. So
I'm going to try my hardest.
There we go. Tell us a little bit about your wrestling fandom, because thinking back to the beginning of this interview, I think you said that you've been a lifelong wrestling nut for as long as you can remember.
Yeah, so look, full cards on the table, guys. I know you can't tell it from my youthful good looks, but I'm a bit more advanced than the average rookie. So if I tell you that my earliest wrestling memory was The Undertaker's debut at Survivor Series in 1991, that sort of gives the game away about how old I actually am. But no, I have been a lifelong fan of it ever since it was. It's funny actually, because I watched the CJ podcast and he talked about the wrestling games, getting him into wrestling, and I had a similar thing when I was a kid. It was the toys. Didn't know anything about wrestling, but merits as it was there, a bit of a blast from the past. You sort of, I think I picked up sort of 2 or 3 of the old Hasbros, which I wish I kept hold of now, given the current market value for them. But it's and that's what got me into it. And then I was going to the video shop and I was getting all the Coliseum video, UK Rampage stuff, and getting more and more into it. So I was a big fan as a kid. Now, the other thing about me, which a lot of people close to me know, is I've actually got 6 brothers. So I come from a big family, and all of us were wrestling mad. So there was a period there in the late 90s where everyone was into wrestling, and my mum actually had to switch it off. It was an enforced ban from wrestling because she was sick of furniture breaking, people getting gashes in their heads, people the damage we were causing. And it wasn't until the sort of later years when I was a bit more grown up it was the games that brought me back into it. It was like the Attitude SmackDown games on PlayStation. I started playing. It's like, oh, Big Boss Man, I recognize him. I remember him from when I was a kid. And it got me back into it, and I started watching the latter end of the Attitude era, what they call the boom period, that sort of early 2000s. Rock Austin. That I never really was into WCW at the time. I still am a massive WWE fanboy. Absolutely loved the Hardys, just absolutely captivated me. I was very much a Grebo myself back in the day with the Skater Boys and the studded belts and the punk rock, and the Hardy Boys just called to me at that time, and everything they stood for, because they represented what modern wrestling was, and I just thought, this is insane. This is so much better than it was when I was a kid. And ever since then, it's been that one thing that's bonded me and my family. It's just our love of wrestling. Like we've all got very different personalities, all into our own stuff away from wrestling, different career paths. But the one thing that we've kept us so close and over the last couple of decades is our love for wrestling. We've traveled, gone to SummerSlams, gone abroad. So I've been a lifelong fan of wrestling. I've done the backyards. I've made the belts out of cardboard. It's a big thing. I've done the E-Feds. I was really nerdy. I was like one of those guys that would like role play online and like to create my own character and stuff like that. So it's a wonder that
them back in the day. Used to run a play-by-mail wrestling game. Whatever happened to them? The internet came along.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
That just demonstrates how old I am.
it became less niche, and I think we were exposed and felt a bit silly doing it. But it was so much fun, right? And it meant so much. So it is a wonder it took me so long to actually just, grow some balls and step into the ring. But here I am, and I've got this 30 years of watching wrestling catalogue in my head.
Well, tell us about that, because we discussed this off air before we went live. And like I say, you got into the wrestling business. You started training maybe slightly later than many of the youngsters that get into the business nowadays.
Everyone.
What was kind of the inspiration? What was that spark that made you think, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to find a school. I'm going to get some boots. I'm going to step through them doors and start hitting the ropes and, live out my dream. But tell us a bit about that inspiration, that moment that drove you to do it.
Right. So it is. I told him I'd end up speaking about him at length, and this is probably the best chance to do it. So Dale Johnson, who you've probably heard of and seen on the scene, he is the youngest of my brothers, believe it or not. You don't look it, but he's the youngest out of all of us, and he was the one who finally got the courage to find a wrestling school and step in the ring and do it. Now, by this point, I'm already telling myself, oh, I'm too old for marathons, and I'm not going to get into anything like that. I'm a dad of two. This is my life now. Career focused corporate banker, Simon. That was my thing. And then Dale, actually, being a naturally gifted and talented and athletic guy. I mean, I remember when he was 5, he was hitting me with whisper and wins off the sofa onto the floor. Like he was just naturally sort of wrestling was his thing. He went and did it, and we were just all so proud of him as a family for actually finally being this wrestler. And I would go to on his shows, and I'd be his biggest cheerleader in the crowd because I'm like, yes, come on, Dale, let's do it. But every time there's an intermission or break, I'd be sort of like walking around the ring and I'd be caressing the apron with my fingers, or I'd be pulling at the ropes and thinking, what if, what if I did it? What if I got involved? Nah, maybe I'm too old for it. Well, maybe I'm not, sort of thing. Never really sort of thought about it too seriously. And then, the world shut down. COVID happened, and everything got put on hold. My mental health took a knock. I think most of the world's did from like inactivity. And I told myself, you know what? Life's too short. I've been a wrestling fan for my whole life. Sorry, been a wrestling fan for so long. I've never even set foot in a wrestling ring as a fan. I've got no idea what it's like to take a bump. No idea what it's like to run ropes. When the world opens up again, God damn it, I'm going to be a wrestler. And I tell you what, I'm going to have one match. One match. That's what I want to do. I just want to be able to tell my kids one day that I've had a match, and I did it. I went for it. So as stop-start as the world was at that time through 2020, 2021, wrestling schools opened, wrestling schools closed. They opened, they closed. We were allowed to, we weren't allowed to. And I did. And Dale, to be fair to him, twisted my arm and said, right, we're opening up again. You said you're going to come down, Colin. I'm not holding back. And it was funny because I was so nervous. I was so nervous about it. It's like, oh my God, like I'm about to go and actually like train to wrestle. And fortunately, the guys there, it was Liam Jones and UK Dominator were the head trainers at Next Gen at the time. So loads of experience there, and they probably looked after me, and they were very good at sort of stroking my ego and being like, oh, you're a big fella, you'd be very good at this sort of thing. And before I knew it, I was throwing people about and throwing myself about, and I sort of never looked back. But I still had in my mind, it was like, all I want to do is just have one match. And of course I did it, got bitten by the bug, and here I am a year and a half into it, holding 2 belts and on a podcast that streams globally. It's all very surreal, but and what I like to think is that although yes, I'm a bit more sort of seasoned, a bit more advanced, I don't have the wear and tear on my body that a lot of people that have been in the business for the last 20 years that I've got a tremendous amount of respect for. So what started off as me going to training, trying to be this guy that would keep up with all the youngsters, and now thanks to especially the shape I've got myself into this year, is I like to think I'm one of the more fitter people in the room as well. So just from a mental well-being point of view, from a physical health point of view, wrestling has just given me a newfound restart in life. And if I can cement some sort of legacy out this, from just where I've been training and what I've been doing at Evo, any other promotions I'm lucky enough to work at, again, I get that old scrapbook out in 10, 20 years time. I can look back and say, do you know what? Fucking hell, Simon, you threw yourself into that and you did it, And I like to think as well, and again, this isn't me blowing my own trumpet, but I would actively encourage anyone in my position who thinks, oh, am I too old to give it a go? I've been a wrestling fan for too long. You absolutely are not too old to do it. If you've got a modicum of athleticism to you, you can do a forward roll. You're going to find a place in wrestling as long as you work hard for it and you throw yourself at it. It's funny because I remember one of my early.
Excuse my dog's making a bit of a cameo.
It's fine. There's a high possibility my kids might blast through the door. So we'll deal with that if that happens. But no, one of my earliest memories of meeting Luna Blue, one of my best friends in wrestling, was her telling me about how when she was 21, she was like asking Evolution Wrestling whether she was too old to start training at 21. Did she feel like it's a young person's game? And I think we all get held up on this idea that, like football, like rugby, it's one of those things you have to be spotted when you're 14, 15, and that's the only way you're ever going to make it. And it's really, really not like that at all. Like, genuinely, anyone listening, who feels like they've got the confidence, the passion, and the slightest bit of athleticism about themselves, can find a place in wrestling. And I'd like to serve as some sort of like inspiration for that. I think that's one of the legacies I'd like to leave in my short-term run that I have.
And like you say, you've been in the business a couple of years, and you've made swift progress. Like you say, there's a number of reasons for that. But in that short space of time, I bet there's been quite a few light bulb moments as well, hasn't there? Which has helped to speed up your process and progress. Sorry, to speed up your progress and to kind of smarten you up to certain things within the business. Can you recall any specific light bulb moments and how they've helped you?
It is amazing how long you can watch wrestling as a fan and still not really get it, like from a learning point of view. Like, I think as a fan, you're so enamored with what you're seeing, and you're invested in all the other stuff. Like, we all love wrestling, but we love the storylines, we love the drama, we love the backstage stuff. That was some of our favorite wrestling memories. Would be like Marty Jannetty being thrown through the barbershop window, or Stone Cold dropping Triple H from a car. Those sort of stuff. Like, oh, I love wrestling because I love that sort of stuff. And then when it comes to actually learning in the ring, you realize, oh gosh, this is actually like an art form. Like, even wrestling from the 70s, 80s, 90s today, there is a fundamental basis of technique that you have to have. And you think to yourself, right, I've been watching wrestling for 30 years. Wrestling on the TV now is so far removed from what I was watching in the 80s. And the gap actually isn't there. I think the light bulb for me was like realizing the gap isn't there as big as you think it is. A bit of a segue. Well, one of the biggest tributes I saw with the news of Terry Funk a week ago was Charlie Sterling put on his Instagram story about how Terry Funk was one of the best at filling the gap, at being an entertainer, about sort of creating space outside the ring, gobbing off at fans. And like the clip he shared, I'm like, that's Charlie. That Charlie does that. That's exactly what Charlie does. He's like for like, you could lift out to Terry Funk from those 70s, 80s and put him into a 2023 setting. It works. Okay, the athleticism and the moves are a lot cooler and stuff, and that's a big part of it. That's the other side of the coin. But the light bulb for me is that you can draw inspiration and the fun stuff from any generation of wrestling, because there's a universal just love that this is an entertainment. We don't take it as fans, we don't take it tremendously seriously. You've just got to be a wrestler, and that for me is the biggest thing. Like, again, I've only been wrestling a year and a half. I'm by no means experienced, but any new trainees that I come across, the biggest thing I say to them, the biggest light bulb for me is just live in the moment. Just be a wrestler. Like, there's nothing worse than two guys standing in the ring being like trying to work out what the next spot is. Like, I've sort of got to a point now where just punch him in the face. You're in a contest, you're in a fight, and I feel like, again, that's the biggest light bulb journey for me that I've had over the last year and a half, is just be a wrestler. You know what a wrestler is. Just be a wrestler. Study, learn your craft. That's the other big thing I would say, that you have to watch wrestling to be a wrestler. So yeah, sorry, I waffled on there, but it's just brain dump of everything as a trainee.
Yeah, that's great. And we have had a ton of questions now, Rob and Ben and one or two others. I will get to your questions before the end of the interview. Please do not worry. But I want to talk a little bit about your style and the influences, or if you have any influences over your style, because of course you're quite unique. You're 6'6". You're a big guy. I mean, when I've seen your matches both live and on YouTube, you're very reminiscent of kind of early 2000 WWE Test. Do you remember Test?
What a compliment. Yeah.
Tall, athletic, and could move around the ring. And I think certainly your moveset and your style was very reminiscent of Test. And I think he was massively underrated as a performer. Should have gone further than he did. But do you have any specific influences or wrestlers that you look up to, as strange as that might be, because you're 6'6", but
No.
do you have any influences over there, whether they be big guys or anybody else?
I think it depends on what I know is coming up and the type of matches I've got to have, but depending on who I study. I think for the last year and a half, I've got a newfound appreciation for guys like John Cena and Drew McIntyre. Again, not as a fan before, wasn't necessarily the coolest thing to get into. I wasn't, we can all appreciate how good John Cena was at his craft now, and it's great to see the respect he gets. But at the time, I was one of those guys that was like, Cena sucks, and CM Punk and all that sort of stuff. But I like the edgy side of it. But now going back and watching his work in how he was just just larger than life, and did everything he could just to be a wrestler and the fire. He's definitely an inspiration for me. Same with Drew McIntyre. I think the transformation he went through, the stuff he did in his indies, where he was working his ass off at ICW and stuff like what's the other one? What Culture Wrestling. Those pieces, like I could watch that stuff forever. Like again, because he was a big guy like myself, with the same height. And trying to bring in that athleticism along with the presence. Love them. They're both my sort of two big inspirations in the mainstream. I think if I'm giving the flowers out on a local basis, though, my two biggest inspirations are Joel Redman and Bullet. The two guys there, I've got, Joel gave me the best advice when I was just a trainee. I hadn't even made my debut yet. I was just ring crewing an Evo show very, very early on. Spoke to Joel backstage, and even then I was a little bit like, oh, Joel Redman, this is like former NXT sort of superstar. Like, and I just started talking to him, and I just explained, like, I've got no idea how to be a good guy. I'm 6'6", and he gave me the best advice. And he said, just be a superhero. Just be a superhero. I was like, well, great. I'm a huge superhero fan. He said, that's all the fans want to see. Just want to see a superhero. They want good versus evil. And that was like, that just stuck with me. So I was like, right, well, if I'm a face, I'm a superhero. I'm going to be that John Cena. I'm just going to be Super Simon as much as I can. And Bullet, again, I'm so happy to see how successful he's becoming and getting his opportunity in progress. So I think it's been a long time coming. He's another guy who can move really quickly, and he gave me some advice. Yeah. He watched one of my matches really, really early on. He was at a show, and he gave me advice about just like movement and just protecting my size a bit more and stuff. He's probably the best big man in the UK at the moment. If I'm being honest.
He would have many believe he's the best big man in Europe, but
well, yeah, okay.
Love you, Ben.
I can't comment on that, but he's again, like I said, those two. They're the guys that if I've got a spare 10 minutes in between the daily life, that I'm looking up on the tube and just studying what they're up to and what they're doing. A lot of that doesn't disregard other wrestlers and their styles, but I'm never going to be like a Dan Maloney. I'm never going to be like someone massively like technical, and I'm never going to be an ultraviolet wrestler. You think with all the gimmick matches I've had, I've got a taste for it. I don't. I just seem to find myself in those matches sometimes. But I've got to sort of study the wrestlers that I want to be, and those guys, the big guys, the Sheamuses as well. Those are the guys. Those are the wrestlers I want to be. So I'm going to borrow and steal as much as I can, and hopefully bring it all together and put on a complete show for people.
Absolutely. You're definitely delivering the goods. And the other thing that really struck me, especially when I've met you and worked with you at United back at the Tap Social, was that you were also a very, very good promo guy as well. And if anybody kind of follows you on Instagram, they can check out your videos and see you cut other promos at other promotions. But certainly at United, I've got to kind of see you kind of work in full character. And there is the height difference. Simon, I'm sure you're standing on a box there. I'm not sure. You standing on a box? Or maybe I was crouching a little bit just to make the talent look more powerful, of course. But I mean, tell us a bit about your prowess for cutting a promo and cutting a new. You seem very comfortable with that sort of thing. You almost kind of relish it, to be honest with you. Has it always been that way?
I don't know. It's not something I've specifically worked at, if I'm being honest. It's I think because like a lot of my career outside of wrestling is focused on not public speaking, but certainly speaking in forums where there's an audience you have to present and you have to listen. So being articulate and trying to have the right cadence where you can is something I've worked hard on in my daily life. So I like to think maybe some of that stuff becomes natural. I'm also, and the thing is, you've seen these promos online, and I appreciate you saying that they're good. I mean, I'm also a bit of a perfectionist. Like you've probably seen one that might be the third or fourth one I've done.
Really?
So yeah.
So we all do that. We all do that.
I'm big enough to admit that. It's just like if it's something I don't like about it or something I fluff up. But no, I mean, I've always said to you when I saw you and I saw your screen with the Jonas podcast stuff. At the first time I met you, the couple of United shows ago, I was like, yes, we get Jonas, because it just adds that air of legitimacy for it. So again, it's like, no, I'm getting involved in this. I'm giving that microphone. I'm making it as much as possible because I get to be a wrestler again. I get to be a pro wrestler who's being interviewed, and again, it gets presented in this lovely way. That doesn't look like it's on my phone in my bedroom. You know, it's that we're not fortunate enough to get that sort of stage that you provide at shows. So it's really great when we see you there. And yeah, it's just a case of like, just let's go, let's channel the adrenaline and just be true and just speak what's on your mind. That's all you can be.
Absolutely. Let's jump to some questions because I've got some viewers that have been very, very patient. And let's see, Ben Parsons again. Thank you, Ben. Question for Simon. What would be your chosen stipulation for the match to unify the CPW Heavyweight Championship, possibly against Saxon? So when Saxon does land back on these shores, I'm sure he's going to want to claim to be the real world's CPW champion against the interim. But a particular stipulation, I think it needs to be a stipulation just to have that big blow off between the two of you. What do you think?
So I've wrestled Saxon Huxley 3 times now, and I've never beaten him. So he's another one that I need to test my mettle against. Funnily enough, we have wrestled under a stipulation before. December 2022 for Evo. When he was the Evo champion and I was challenging him, we had a bring your own weapon to the match. And at that time, he was channeling the spirit of Bruiser Brody and swinging a chain to the ring. And I bought a table, which I ended up going through myself and losing. So I feel like I wouldn't want a stipulation that was like too sort of bells and whistly. I think I just want a straight up fight, man on man. But I would also want it to just go if it needs to go. So for me personally, no DQ, no holds bars. Let's just have that until we get a winner.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. Hopefully we'll get to see that sooner rather than later. And we've got Rob watching us via YouTube. Thank you, Rob. Simon soon to be triple champion. We sure hope so. Memes doesn't want that to happen, of course. We shall see on October the 29th. Let's have a quick look. Ben again, and very nice. Simon Quest, my little niece's favourite wrestler. And soon to be many more, I'm sure. Tell us a bit about some of your dream opponents. Now, I know this is a fairly stock question, but a couple of years into the business, you've ticked off some pretty big bucket list names already that we've spoken about during the course of this interview. But are there any more? I mean, you've mentioned Bullet. I don't know if you've been in the ring with Bullet. That would be a pretty tasty match between the two of you. But
I would. So Bullet's been on my list for a long time. He's someone if I was in a situation where I was wrestling Bullet, I'd be proper channeling that British Bulldog, Warlord, Royal Albert Hall spirit for that type of match. I feel like that's just 2 big men going at it. Love that stuff. Other dream opponents, like obviously Niwa's a big hard bastard. He's someone I'd like to go against. Match. Sentimentally, I'd like to go 1-on-1 with Adonis Payne. I feel like me and him could have an interesting dynamic. Similarly, Scotty Rourke as well. He's another one who I feel like I could have some interesting stuff with. He's just a crazy bastard, and he'd probably hit me with stuff I never even knew was possible. Who else would be close to home? Evolution Wrestling, myself and Tommy Sykes, who's one of the young and up-and-comers. Unsung heroes, a gold standard, I might add. We've never had a 1-on-1 match. He'd be one of my dream opponents. Those are sort of like within the realms of reality, I think. Tate Mayfair's is another one. He's a charismatic guy. Big fan of everything that he's doing at the moment. There's a really, really long list at the moment. Dream opponents, like mainstream wise, like I said, it's the guys I grew up with that I just a big fan of. I'd love to wrestle Sheamus one day. I'd love to wrestle like Drew McIntyre again. These like just the guys that I'm just big fans of that are still out there doing the best they can, because I'm not one to shy away from a challenge, and I want to face the very best.
Absolutely. Now, very soon we're going to ask you for your socials and where my viewers and listeners could reach out and see more of Simon Quest. But just a quick reminder of the remainder of my guests to come throughout the month of September. I've got an all-in-one picture here. Obviously, we've got Simon, a wonderful guest today. But next Wednesday, I've got the ULT, Josh Spicer, joining me live on the Wrestling with John's podcast, Wednesday the 13th. The following Monday the 18th, I've got Dave Sharp from I think it's Brick King Pro, former 4FW owner and trainer. It's going to be great to take a deep dive with Dave about the glory years of 4FW and the very exciting future of Brick King Pro. Johnny Quasto, former WWE 205 Live announcer and now stand-up comedian, will be joining me on Thursday the 21st. On Monday the 25th, I've got Kamikaze joining me just before he heads back home to Canada. And of course, Kamikaze has been working with Joel and the All-Star Wrestling South guys in Salisbury. So it'd be great to get his take. And he's glorious career, North America, Canada, and of course more recently over here in the UK. On the 28th, I've got the Stallion, Chris Bronson, coming onto the show. Chris don't do many interviews. That's going to be a fun one to watch with the Stallion on the 28th. And of course, Mal Sanders. I recorded already a Legends Masterclass with Mal, and parts 1 and parts 2 will be dropping shortly. But next week, it is about this guy here. Josh Spice will be joining me Wednesday, the 13th of September, live on Wrestling with Johners, 8 p.m. UK time. You're not going to want to miss that. But Mr. Quest, if any of my viewers or listeners want to reach out, want to learn more about you, want to see some of your footage or some of your awesome promos, my friend, where can they do so? And if it helps, I do have a little ticker running along the bottom of the screen there.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'd be grateful for any follows, any interest you have in my work. I put a lot of effort into it. But I'm most active on Instagram because I'm a bit of an egotist and I'm vain. I think to be a successful wrestler, you have to be. But yeah, my Instagram @sidequest.res is probably the most active place I am. Find out about all upcoming shows and title defenses and title challenges. I'm also available on Facebook as Simon Quest _wrestler as well. Those are the two best ways to get hold of me. And within those arenas, you'll see a graphic with other ways to contact me should you need to. Otherwise, it's you see me face to face. I would be not doing my home promotion justice if I didn't big up the next big show in Yate, Uprising, 16th of September, Saturday, where I do defend my title against Sonam, another big hard bastard that I've got to see off best I can. And then at the end of September, it's What You Deserve, one of Evolution Wrestling's biggest shows of the year, of September 30th in Hanover, Bristol as well. So busy back end of September. But yeah, socials, also hopefully seeing you face to face. I'd be grateful for any support I get.
That's it. Go and see him at the shows. And of course, Evolution Wrestling are building up to this one here, December the 2nd, Forever Young, with Eric Young, current Impact, former WWE star. There you are on the poster with CJ, Charlie Sterling, and Iestyn.
Yes.
That's going to be a stacked show. I don't suppose you know what you're doing for that show yet, but it's an exciting one to look forward to for sure.
I have not been given that privileged information. I guess it'll depend if I'm still champion by that point. Should I be? I'm on the poster, so they can't take it away from me now. But no, that show is going to be huge. And I'm telling you now, whereas Boxing Day is traditionally our sentimental biggest show, that Forever Young show will be the one you can't miss because, yeah, Eric Young, I mean, is absolute superstar that we get to share a locker room with and perform in front of our great fans. It's an absolute treat. So, yeah, that one will sell out. Get tickets as soon as possible.
Absolutely. And I want to big up United Wrestling one more time.
Oh, yes.
October the 29th, you can see Simon Quest go on his quest to become a triple champion against Memes for the United Unified Championship, and see if Simon Quest can wipe that smile off of Memes' face. But Simon, it's been awesome having you on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, episode 318. But just want to thank you so much for being an awesome guest, my friend.
No, thank you very much too. I'm going to have a cold shower now. I suggest you have a cool beverage or sit in front of a fan for a bit because I'm absolutely melting here. But no, thank you. It's been an absolute honor, and yeah, you're a gracious host. Appreciate it.
There we go. Simon Quest, see you at the shows, and thank you very much.